Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. We're a company built on human potential. We're going to put people first, so we need to lead by example. Tami Bonnell, co-chair of EXIT Realty International. If you don't know EXIT, you're clearly not paying attention. Has a background in real estate from being a little girl on sites, thinking I'm going to become an entrepreneur, to running this international company. Not a master, but up there as far as I understand in martial arts. Of the people I've had on the show, few have read as many books per year as Tami, and I can't wait to talk more about that. Quite the bibliophile. As you know, if you're listening, we love readers and thoughtful people on the show. And this quote sums it all up. We're a company built on human potential. We're going to put people first, so we need to lead by example. Shout out to season 5, episode 57. If you're listening to this podcast, go check out that episode. It'll be a completely different conversation. Tami, thanks for coming back. We need you now. We've had some real estate conversations. And thanks for coming back on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
I would like to know what type of thought process that you're having the night before you go to bed, and your general philosophy of how to succeed right now in the current market, the current state of affairs. So those two-part questions, like how do you prepare before you get up the next morning? And then what's your philosophy on the current state of affairs, the opportunities?
Well, I think here's what works for me. First of all, I think that mindset is 4 times as important as even the activities you do. So your headspace has to be in the right place. That's actually why I'm in training to become a master, because I'm a huge fan of being in control of your mind and in control of your body, and seeing how far you can take it, right? In any direction, how far you can honestly take it. But before I go to bed at night, I keep a pad of paper right beside my bed, and I ask myself a couple effective questions. And is there anything that's concerning me right now? And if there is, I write it down. Was I a good wife? Was I a good mother? Was I a good grandmother? Was I a good friend? Did I take exit further today? And I always ask the same questions, but anything that's bothering me, I write it down, because there's nothing I can do about it between midnight and 6 a.m. So if I write it down on a pad of paper, I know it's going to be taken care of. Now it's out of my mind, so that I'm not going to do the 3 a.m. wake up worried about what's going on. And I also write down the top 3 things I want to accomplish the next day, because, and more important than anything, is I don't go to number 2 until I finish number 1. And I don't go to number 3 until I finish number 2, so that there's always a feeling and a sense of accomplishment. And I ask myself what I'm grateful for, but that preps me pretty well for the next day, so that I'm in the right headspace.
The state of affairs in real estate. What are your thoughts?
The state of affairs in real estate. Are we talking about the National Association, or are we talking about in general?
Yeah, that's recently popped up as well. Let's start with the in general.
Okay.
And go to the other event.
Sure. There's obviously affordability is an issue. Interest rates are an issue, and the availability right now, there's still some serious pent-up demand. So I think that it's the most important thing for people to focus on is the solution. We have a lot of zoning changes that are happening. So if I was an agent today, I would be paying attention to planning boards and municipalities, because there's going to be some changes. And if you have an opportunity to be there first, I think that's a great opportunity. Asking yourself effective questions and really looking at where everything's at, that 30,000 foot view, the 2,000 foot view, and the street level view. There are areas where real estate is selling and selling like crazy. And then there's areas where it's much more slowed down. But people love their interest rate, but they're not necessarily in love with where they are right now. And people move because of their circumstances. So I believe that things will free up much more in the spring of next year. February, March, April, things will start to free up, because people at some point in time have to look at quality of life, right? Whether it's seniors that want to move closer to family, or people that moved too far out during the pandemic, and turns out they don't like crickets, or that have to go back into the office and it's too much of a commute for them. People always move because of their circumstances. And circumstances change every single day. So I don't think that we're in a couple of good things that are going to happen out of it is that some of these people that came in just to do real estate because everything was selling like crazy, they will be leaving the business. And that's a good thing, because it really needs to have people that know what they're doing and can handle every single bit of the transaction. There are a lot of people that bought during the pandemic, first-time home buyers and baby boomers, which is more surprising to me, that are not happy with where they are and that have buyer's remorse in one way,
Really?
shape, or another. And almost 50% of first-time home buyers that bought during the pandemic. And it's because they did a lot of things rashly. They weren't rational about what they were doing. So they bought sight unseen. They bought, they bought without a home inspection. They waived a home inspection. They waived an appraisal. And then they get out to somewhere that they think is going to be this terrific dream. And you really do have to assess, everything from the commute to, are you going to really love this? And I think you got to get a feel for it, because this is, you buy a house, but it becomes your haven. And so it's a very important purchase, not just because you're investing a tremendous amount of money, but also because you want it to be your haven. And so I think business will pick up again. I'm hopeful that between everything that's going on with the National Association and what's going on in real estate, that will make things a little more uniform as far as what's required of people that are in this industry. The requirements that are required for them, I'm hopeful that they'll make it a little bit more universal, so that you know what you're going to get, regardless of whether you refer somebody from where I am in New England to somebody where you are in Florida, that you get a consummate professional on both sides.
This 50% not rational first-time home buyer, is that because of the power of the event of the pandemic?
It was the event of the pandemic. People bought emotionally, right? And people do buy with emotion, but this was just completely irrational. It turned into controlled chaos.
So I haven't heard anyone say that yet on the show. It's a fascinating and brilliant sociological observation. So do you think that's creating an opportunity for the professionals that have their heads down, that are focused on helping people transition back wherever home was for them?
Right. Asking them effective questions, right? Really asking them effective questions. When, I fly a lot for work, I travel all over the place. And every time I'm sitting next to somebody and they ask what you do, and then you mention it, and then they have a conversation with you. And when I dig a little deeper and they say, oh yeah, I bought during the pandemic, but my rate is, less than 3%. I'm never moving. How do you like your home?
Wow.
I hate it. All right, help me understand. Take me a little bit further here. You hate your home. What are the reasons why? Oh, I have to commute 2 hours. Now I have to go back into the office 3 to 4 days a week. It is not, I thought it was going to be perfect, but it's so far out that they roll up the sidewalks at 9 o'clock and I don't have a social life. So for that interest rate and for that price, you're going to stay there and make yourself miserable? Like, help me understand that.
Yeah,
That's a really tough thing for me. Help me understand that. And so then I'm sitting with them. And do you think realistically, I believe realistically that rates are going to go down a little bit next year. Worst case scenario, you buy and you refinance as time goes on, but doesn't it make sense to be someplace that you love? Where does quality of life come into this equation? And they sit back and they're like, oh my God, I need to move. And it's just so funny to me.
So the money is less important than the meaning.
Right. It always is, but people don't think of it that way. Do you want to have a quality of life? If someone told you you have 5 years left and you hated where you were, would you stay? Honest, I'm serious,
No,
because
right.
tomorrow's not promised, right? And you want to have a quality of life, and I love where I live, and I'm just wake up so grateful. And I think that that's really what people want to have, is some sort of a haven, some sort of a quality of life, and whatever that is for you, whether you have children, dogs, cats, you like being by yourself, you want to hole up in a book. It doesn't matter what it is, but you've got to find that thing that brings you joy. And I haven't seen a lot of people towards the end of their life say, I wish I made more money.
This 50% of first-time home buyers, that sounds like it would be a massive number.
It is a massive number, right? And then and it got out of control. A lot of them, and I have to say, for first-time home buyers, it's not the same kind of regret as it is for baby boomers. A lot of baby boomers, they moved way out in the country thinking they were going to love that, and then they didn't have access to the things that they had access to before. So for a lot of them, it was much more that they don't really like the sound of crickets, and it's not helping them to fall asleep at night and that kind of thing. For first-time home buyers, a lot of them just got out of control because they were so afraid of not being part of it, right? Everybody started doing this controlled chaos that they overspent. And so they went to the top of top of the line affordability, and first-time home buyers not getting an education from somebody to share with you all the things that you're going to run into, right? You buy a home, and all of a sudden the water heater goes, but you're a water heater away from not being able to make your mortgage payment. So there were a lot of people that ended up in that circumstance. And so when the market shifts, and it always does, real estate goes through cycles. How long is it going to take for them to get back up to the value? Values are still going up because there's pent up demand. But as soon as there's not the same level of pent up demand, what's going to happen? We got to the point of being out of control with the average sales price, right?
Let me get this straight. So the lower rate isn't necessarily going to offset the psychology leading to overspending.
Right.
Overbuying, like I bought too much of a house.
Too much of a house, or they spent too much money. Look at how many multiple offers there were that people was literally $100,000 over asking price, borrowing money from parents, taking the equity out of their parents' home in order to be able to get into the market, just doing it in a panic, not because this is the house of my dreams and this is where I want to be. I just have to get in a house.
Wow.
Have to, and I must. Those, two terms I don't want to have to use in my life, right?
Yeah,
I must.
So, okay, so you're finding that when your team, your people dig a little deeper, they find that things may not be the way that they appear, and there's tremendous opportunity.
There is opportunity
in the profession right now.
Yeah, there's opportunity. The problem is that people focus on the problem and not on the solution. I had a group. This is just an amazing story, and I'll make it as quick as I can. So University of Maine has the largest 3D printer in the world. And they have a whole bunch of engineering courses. So they have people that are engineers, every type of engineer that you want to think of. They have courses there so that people can become an engineer, but they also have a graphics department, an art department. So kind of the difference between the two, when they joke around, you ask the engineers what time it is, they tell you how the watch was built. You ask the artists what time it is, they say, who cares, right? And they would always rival each other. And then they took them on a field trip and took them to a homeless shelter, and they took them to a homeless encampment of veterans. And they came back, and instead of joking around with each other and fighting with each other, they sat down and collaborated and said, how can we fix this? But the engineers put together the design, and the 3D printer in the graphics department built a 12-unit, completely sustainable building to house veterans. That's miraculous. Completely sustainable out of a 3D printer. Are you kidding me? So, but they were only focused on collaborating and finding out what the solution is. They're not focused on the problem. They're focused on how do we fix it? How do we fix it together? If we have a problem and there's a shortage of inventory, and I go to the planning board and I find that there's some commercial buildings in town that we could literally turn into mixed use and give them an opportunity for some condos there, so that there is an opportunity for some housing, right? If we had more sustainable, that's an issue. Well, we just saw them do it once, so I know that they can do it again. We have prefab homes that you can put down on a lot that makes it more affordable. There are always solutions. You just have to pay attention to where's the hole, and where's that void, and how can I fill that void? Or what's the need here specifically in whatever it is that you're representing? What is the need? Do you need more affordable housing where you are? Do you need to have more condos where you are? What is the actual need? Shortage of listing inventory. I go have conversations with people, right? And have a conversation with them and find out, honestly, when they plan on moving, what do they love about where they live? What don't they love? And now all of a sudden we're having a conversation and you find out they haven't loved where they moved out of urgency, and they haven't loved it, or their whole family moved away. When I look at seniors, most of them, the number one thing they want is to move closer to family. They don't want to watch grandchildren growing up on FaceTime, right? They want to be able to be closer. So just coming in and asking those effective questions, I think you can turn some things around regardless of where you are. There's a huge amount of pent up demand. So now let's just go figure out where we can find a solution, right?
I'm thinking in the opportunity, if there's this event driven geographical pivot, it's like people moved. It's event driven. If I'm reaching out to people that are not even listed, I'll come to find that they actually really want to be listed.
Right.
They'd rather not be there
And,
at a
and
higher level of conversion.
a lot of them stay super glued to their interest rate.
To not then list.
Right. But they're super glued to their interest rate. But if you ask enough, you peel back the onion and ask enough questions, you find out that they're not where they want to be. And so would you, for the difference of whatever that is, would you just give up your quality of life and decide that you're going to just stay there forever? What are you waiting for? Are they waiting for the rate to go down? Are they waiting for a miracle? Are they waiting for what?
Sounds like they're waiting for leadership, right?
Right.
Because the unknown leads to paralysis.
Right. And that's exactly what it is. It's the fear of the unknown.
I want to go back to that story for a second. You're saying that these two different groups, both in their own genius zone, the technician types and the creative types, they left their environment to go see this other environment that was, it sounded like worse off than that. So I'm curious what gratitude plays in solving solutions, because it makes me think of the psychological impact. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That you're so fortunate, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? When you feel that level of fortunate, don't you want to do something good for someone else?
It makes me think like going outside of their ecosystems, seeing someone else worse off, lowered the divide between these two teams.
Yes.
You could speak to that.
Yes. And when you give people that's such a wonderful thing, that we could have exposure to experiences to realize just how fortunate we are. I remember taking my children to another country the first time, taking them to Italy and taking them to this little village. And we went and got pizza at the top of this village in this building that literally, it was an apartment building. It was summertime. None of them had any air conditioning. None of them had any televisions. There were about 17 barefoot children playing hacky sack, all with one hacky sack, chasing each other, having a blast. All the stone steps were worn, so it was almost like a ramp because of how old the building was. And at the very top, there was a pizza place. And literally, this used to be, I'm not sure if it was a castle or what it was, but they used to fight wars at the top where this pizza place was. And the pizza place put up a giant queen-size sheet and had a projector because the playoffs for soccer were happening and none of these people owned a television. And they allowed everybody to come down to this outdoor cafe, put out blankets. They could bring their own food. They weren't even, I'm in a restaurant, so you can't come unless you buy something. They let every single person within this village come and watch the playoffs because Italy's in the playoffs. And I remember my kids just wide-eyed of that these kids were having so much fun with something so simple, and that you really don't need that much. And literally from that point on, they, even Christmas time or whatever, they just, no, I'm good. You know, what would you like? No, I'm good. You know,
Wow.
just, it changed their perspective so quickly of how, even how relaxed, because we're so intense in the United States. You know, you go to a restaurant in Italy and you're like, so what time do you open? 6, maybe 7, maybe 8. You're like, no, I need a time, you know?
Yeah.
And it just changes your perspective. People need exposure to experiences.
I wrote this down. Entitlement separates us, gratitude unifies us.
I love that. I love that.
Because I'm thinking about that story, right? These two different teams, they're both probably really, just at the highest caliber competence in their two departments. So they're entitled to have their opinion. They're not,
Right.
they're not mixing their ideas. And then they go see these people less than them, and then they go and figure out the solution to the problem.
Right.
So you think times like this, partly the opportunity, or I would like to use, if you could speak to this, these harder times, it lowers entitlement. Like it forces us to not be as, I don't know, wrapped up in our story about who we
I
are.
think for most people, unfortunately, they'll be, entitlement is probably my least liked word. And, but I do still see it, even with things being difficult. But I do believe that it softens people and makes them realize what's really important. I think that the pandemic had an impact for people like that too, right? Of just all of a sudden appreciating the sunset and the sunrise.
Yes.
Having a whole new appreciation for nature, and seeing that we were, not trashing the planet as much. There were some eye-opening experiences like that, but also just wanting to be part of a community, being part of a community, and wanting to make sure that everyone was okay, and checking on your neighbors, and all the things that we didn't do before that. I hope out of the pandemic, we don't let go of that we really, there's a great Google for 2022, the most asked questions on Google. There's a video, and it's, I don't know, it's like 2.5 or 3 minutes long. And so much of it is, can I change the world? Can I change the world? Can I change my life? Can I make a difference? Can I make an impact? And so hopefully that part of it we take with us.
I probably should ask you what is going on with the lawsuit, because you're one of the pundits of the industry. People look up to you for answers at scale. So what is this relevant to the average person that's attempting to make a living in the business of real estate? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV. I think it's going to be in the courts for a long period of time. I do think what will happen out of it is that we'll end up with better disclosures and more refined disclosure across the whole country, and hopefully more unified requirements for people that are representing the biggest investment most people will ever make. Because real estate goes through cycles, right? Sometimes we have extreme highs and lows, and sometimes we're in the middle. But whenever we get up to a high, we have all these people that join the industry because it's very easy to get into. The threshold to get into, the amount of education you need isn't a lot, but it's varies state to state, and it's a great income for a state. So like I live in Massachusetts, it's only 40 hours to get your real estate license and represent the biggest investment most people will ever make. 1,500 hours, you can cut somebody's hair.
Yeah.
And it's going to grow back, right? So I'm hoping they're going to make it more unified all the way across, and that we'll come up with much better disclosures so that we're really educating the consumer, we're really educating agents, and the brokers also are being educated at the same time.
How's EXIT capitalizing?
Well, I think that the whole entire thing is just, we're making sure that we're providing as much information and education as humanly possible, and having the conversations, because just like you were talking about before, fear paralyzes you, right? And so you don't want people to be fearful. This will be in the courts for a long time because it'll go back and forth and back and forth. But fear does have a huge impact. So do the right thing, have the conversations. You know, there used to be buyer brokerage in every state in the country, and now they have a uniform setup in about 15 states. So they need to bring that all the way across too, so that we're really educating a buyer and giving them tremendous amount of disclosures. But, you know, there's a couple of pieces of this pie. One, if I signed a contract that said, I know that the person representing the buyer is also going to get paid out of this contract. That's a signed contract. So how it got to this point, I'm not so sure. Two, if we're in a market, when we're in a seller's market, I can go to a buyer and help them and educate them. If I'm in a, I got to explain this right. So if I'm in a market where it's really tough to buy a home, and I'm a first-time home buyer, and it's really tough, even affordability wise, where does the money come from for that person to represent the buyer? Is it unfair if people that have plenty of money, now I can pay a buyer representative to represent me and watch out for my best interests? But if I'm a first-time home buyer, where is that going to go? Is it going to roll into mortgages? Is it going to roll into mortgages? Are there going to be grants? How is that going to happen? We'll find a solution, because housing is incredibly important. We'll find a solution. But I think having those conversations and focus not on the money of the DOJ always follows the money, not on the money part of going and suing for millions and millions of dollars. Let's look at what is the fairest and in the best interest of the consumer.
All right, let me see if I followed. It seems as though culture and economics has clashed here in a sense, because if maybe help me out here if I'm missing this, but how the real estate community was relating to itself may have created this opportunity for legal to get in. But ultimately, that example that you just used, like I have no money, right? So how the system, or I'm a buyer, or I have limited capital.
And I just saved exactly enough for a down payment.
And so like that's normal in upward mobility, right? Because upward mobility is about, I have I'm thinking psychologically. I have limited resources, so I've got to be resourceful as a person to achieve the American dream. I'm going to go out there. I'm not entitled because I literally don't have anything. I'm going to get to work and make my life happen. So, example, if I'm going to go buy a house and the capital that supports me as that buyer, that first time home buyer, that statistically would have less resources, comes from the sale of the home. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the cycle of life.
But now let's look at let's even take it a step further. Okay. We're in a market and it's not a seller's market, right? Things aren't selling as quickly. The market slows down a little bit. The average value goes down.
The people that don't know.
So right now we're in a seller's market. If that house is in decent shape, it's going to be sold, right? And the values are going up. But when it levels off and there's not the same level of demand, then the values go down a little bit, right? And I need to get as many eyes on a home as I possibly can if I need to sell my home. Then would the seller argue to pay both sides just so long as they can sell their home? Representation, people that are represented by a professional, a real estate professional, as opposed to selling for sale by owner, they've done the averages every single year. They take home more money when they have someone represent them.
Yeah, it's like basic economics, like supply and demand.
Right. So they make more money when they have somebody represent them, even after paying for the agent that's representing the seller and the agent that's representing the buyer. They still net more money than they do when they're trying to sell something themselves. So would they be willing to do that when the market is slower? Would they be willing to do that? It'll be very interesting to see how it completely plays out. It'll be very interesting to see where they end up putting their eyes. I would like us to all collaborate and focus on how do we find a solution that makes everyone satisfied so that we can move on. We know that people's net worth, the average in the United States of someone owning a home as opposed to not owning a home, their net worth is $345,000 higher. So we know it's valuable to your own home. And we know that that gives you the opportunity to create family wealth, to create a future, right? To build a nest egg. So now we need to figure out how do we do it so that every side is happy. This isn't, I don't think anybody deliberately tried to do something wrong. I think
No, that's where I agree.
a window
I think
of
this is
opportunity.
the culture nitpicking over things. It seems like basic economics that's now being challenged because of.
It's been done this way for over 100 years without it being challenged.
That's
right?
that's weird.
And then somebody saw an angle, and the DOJ always follows the money. So, but we'll see how it ends up playing out. I do think that we'll need more disclosures. I do think that I'm hopeful that it raises the bar on people coming in.
Just talking to you about this has really made me think, and I want to explore this topic much more, which, you know, I greatly appreciate, because it's a fascinating topic. Because that when you mention that about the buyers, it's like, what could be the long-term consequence of people being less likely to be able to even get into housing? Then we'd have more renters. That eventually hurts the overall health of any economy, because of the importance of the home. But anyway, yeah, I'm curious, strategy when it comes to strategy.
Even home ownership improves a community. You feel
Well,
much more part of, so it actually improves a community.
Yeah. The basis of our, I think, at least this is the part where I think I have some degree of understanding, is the basis of how our culture works is property rights, the right to be able to have a shelter and call it one's own. Their whole life is built around it. The nuclear family, their economics, right? How they choose to spend their money, the relationships that they build with their neighbor. So, like, what's our country going to be, or, you know, how's our economic system going to work in the future when we don't even have neighbors anymore? Because, you know, I don't know. These are the big questions that I'm drive me to want to work very hard. So, you know, in the spirit of that angle here, what type of work ethic would you suggest is necessary for the current state of affairs in business, in real estate, you know, for our audience? Are you looking this as like, we really got to have our heads down and be focused, or is it not that extreme? I'm curious what your take is on.
Oh, I believe that we need to have our head down and stay focused. And I think that even talking to our people, I tell them the most important thing for them to remember. A lot of people don't like the word discipline, right? It sounds like a lot of work. So I told them to change the word discipline to devotion. You want to know what you want, why you want it, how bad you want it. That'll probably tell you you're on the right track, right? But if you can add one more thing, who benefits if I succeed? If I can think about who benefits if I succeed, that my whole family benefits, the people at EXIT benefit, which is another family, right? The way our culture works. If I can start to think about those kind of things, that if I get to here, it's like if I get to home ownership, how would that benefit my whole family? Oh, we could have Thanksgiving together. We could have, you know, dinners together. We could have everybody put a puzzle together, or have a game night, or like you have all these pictures in your mind, and that now it's something that has so much meaning, and it's adding meaning to it. I think that people want to do meaningful work. And I think that you can stick with it when it's really meaningful. And whether that's representing first-time home buyers, representing veterans, representing single moms, whatever it is that you kind of picked for a lane for yourself, that you really are making a difference in these people's lives, and you're helping to change the trajectory of that family in some way, shape, or form. But I think that when you can take it to devotion so that you really are in your lane. I know for me, my favorite part of what I do is that every single day I get the opportunity to show somebody who they can become.
Wow.
Their eyes open up and they see something they didn't see in themselves before. They see something that's possible that they didn't see before. And it's really just because they weren't exposed to those experiences before.
I wrote this down. Meaning helps us be proactive when the economy isn't.
That's great.
Well, because I wrote down your question, so the audience gets this. What do you want? Why do you want it? How bad do you want it? Who benefits from it? Those are amazing questions to go from discipline, like, oh, I have to do this, to devotion. I want to do this. And it's very powerful because think about this. In the last 2 years, if I'm getting called constantly for culture, which I'm not, by the way, right? Never had, right? It was a new idea. So then I don't need to do 200 podcasts in a year, right? Because I'm getting called every day for. So if I'm a real estate professional, I'm getting called or whatever, and I'm getting called because the economy's going up. I don't have to do those uncomfortable things that challenge me. So I got to tap into something deeper. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
But you know, when you get it, when you tap into something deeper, and people want meaningful work. People want to do something that's meaningful. They want to add value somewhere. They want to be part of something better. And so it's just helping them to discover what that part of something better is for them, so that they are encouraged to hustle. Because you can think about it, if you went and you were doing a fundraiser and it was something that was really important to you, it wasn't what you were doing for a living. You were raising funds for a certain group or an entity because you believed that in what they were doing so strongly. You wanted to help them. Kids coming out and selling, cookies door to door because they want to put in an arts program in their school or whatever. They have no problem and no fear asking for it because it's not for themselves. So it makes them more comfortable because they're doing it for someone else. Well, we're all doing stuff for someone else. We just have to make sure that that's top of mind. We're all doing things for someone else. We just need to keep it in the top of our mind so that when you can really picture who benefits if I succeed, you can stick with it. You know, there are times when I'm on about 100 planes a year, and there's times when, you're in a lot of different time zones and you got to pull energy up from your feet. But when you can really picture the impact that it's going to have on the people that you're going to see, then that plane just happens to be my commute, and it doesn't become a big deal anymore.
Keep your energy high from that method.
Right. It keeps your energy high and it keeps you focused. Your accent is on the right syllable, it's in the right direction. I'm in training to become a master in Taekwondo. My goal is by December 2025.
Wow.
And it's tremendous amount of physical work. It's a tremendous amount of head work too, but it's a tremendous amount of physical work. And some of it is truly mind over matter. But when you're really, really tired, you have to really picture what's that end goal, right? What's that picture that you're shooting for? And you really have to make it as visible as possible. I can literally see myself. If I close my eyes, I can see my grandmaster taking off my old belt and putting on the new one and doing the tea ceremony and having done the work. I can picture it. I can bring myself to tears by doing it. So then I can go into the dojang one more time, right? When you're just too tired and you just don't want to. The same thing for work, right? Whatever you're working towards. And maybe it's because you want to shine a light for someone else so that they can see that something's possible. But I think that just putting more meaning into everything just even is the difference between happiness and fulfillment, right? Don't you feel more fulfilled when you're making a difference?
Yes, I don't even think about happiness. I think about the things that I want to say and the things I want to learn. And yeah, if I'm being, it made me think about it. Yeah, I definitely, I like when I'm present with you in this, the audience isn't here in a sense because I'm open to learn and to be myself. So I think I get a lot of fulfillment from the show, which is why I keep doing it.
Well, and I think that people get a lot of fulfillment from your show. I think that you can be in a conversation that you might not have had on your own in any way, shape, or form. And now you can be in a conversation that it's what I love about podcasts more than anything. You're part of a conversation, even though you weren't there. And so, and the conversation back and forth, as opposed to listening to somebody talking at you, I think just opens your mind up so much more. I can't even imagine where people's minds go and what they start to think of. It gets you creative, it gets you motivated, it gets you excited about what's possible because you heard someone else's experience or someone else's expertise and start thinking to yourself, I want more of that. Right?
I agree. And I think that part of my fulfillment comes from this exploration to these questions that I have about culture and who I'm doing it with, and how I'm going about this creation that I'm.
Well, when you write those things down and you say something back, now you're taking what I said and processing it, and so now it's coming out into your words, and that might be something that I never would have thought of, and now all of a sudden, we're on to something even bigger.
In closing, I gotta ask, what are you reading, or what have you read in the last, handful of years since you've been on the show, that we need to recommend to our? Well, I want to know, but as well as our audience, or listening to, what would you advise?
I've actually been reading. I give books away on a regular basis. I give out probably 100 books a month that I send to people because I read something and I hear something in them and it just struck a nerve that maybe this might be helpful for them. But there's a Bob Goff who, I'm much more of a spiritual person than a religious person. I believe that all of us are connected. And so I'm much more of a spiritual person. I believe that he's a little bit more religious than I am, but he's everybody, everywhere, always, I think, is the topic of the book. And it's literally just adding value to every person that you get in front of. And just how fulfilling that is and how fulfilled he must be. He also wrote another book called Love Does. And it just really does make you think about get out of your own head and into your own heart, I think, probably more than anything.
That book really influenced me years ago. Love Does. It's a great book.
Yeah, it's a great book. And you know what? The funny part is I'll go places and people ask me about the books that I've read, and I reread a lot of books. If you can see behind me, I reread a lot of books. I love just being in a book. I love the smell of books. I love just being around them. There's just something magical about that you can just go to another world, and whether that's a story or something that you're learning. But it's funny, almost at least once a week, someone will say to me, well, that book was written however many years ago, or that's an old book. And I'm thinking, how many books do you have that are old books that you could reread over and over again? And does it really matter? Does it have to be the newest thing that's out there or the newest trend that's out there? If it's something that's resonating with you right now.
Yeah, that's profound, because the new ones haven't been tested by the culture yet.
Right.
It'd be the worst idea since. I do have a question for the busy professional listening to this, or the ownership that doesn't. What would be your advice to them to consume information, to think through information, to read or listen, and keep such a productive schedule, right? They're thinking, I can't do that. I can't read that much or listen that much and do my career or run this company. What would you say?
Well, I think that you have to do it in bite-sized doses. So a couple of things that really work for me. One, I book off 4 hours every single month to work on my life, not in it. So halfway through the month, I pick a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, because more stuff hits the fan on Mondays and Fridays. And I literally work on my life, not in it. So I have a list of everything, what I'm trying to accomplish at work, what I'm trying to accomplish at home, what I'm trying to accomplish martial arts, everyone in my family and all of those people that are in a close inner circle for me. How can I have an impact on them? So I plan in advance, and it's an action plan, it's not just, we can have all these plans and all this wonderful things, right? And I have an end goal in mind. And now the strategy is just the steps it takes me to get there. Right? That's as simple as strategy is. So this really is a strategy for how can I help to make my daughter feel loved and have more time with her and have an opportunity. Where are the windows of opportunity over the next, and I kind of overlap by about a couple weeks. So halfway through the month, 15th of December, I'll plan until the 15th of January, actually through to the end of January. Then the 15th of January, I'm going to do it to the end of February and so on. So I plan in advance. How can I maximize on my time? And that's really what happened out of this more than anything, is I can maximize on my time. So I know that I'm going to be somewhere, like I was at the National Association of Realtors convention in Anaheim. I did 7 outside meetings because I was in California and those people were in California, but there's no way it would have happened if I didn't plan it in advance, right? How can I maximize? By telling all the regional owners, have people come by the booth and have a conversation and shake hands. Who do you have that you're working with that you know is going to be there? They might as well say hello and we can validate. Same thing with anything that's going on with your family or your personal life, things that you want to target so that you can really look. And it also helps you to see how you've progressed. So like martial arts wise, I'm working on a form and I have to do a form to music with a bong stool and nunchucks. Wow. So I have to use 2 different weapons and I have to do it to music. And I'm fighting against imaginary opponents, right? And so here's how much thought went into it. I have a guy, our chief technology officer. I'm doing Dream On because Aerosmith and I'm in New England. So, is the song I'm doing, but I had him slow down the music to 50% so I could learn the weapons to the music at a slower rate and then pick up my speed. So it's at 50%, then 75%, then 100%. And then I can do, 8 steps, perfect those, then get to the next 8 steps, perfect those, then get to the next 8 steps. But I can see my progress when I'm doing this 6-week action plan. I can see how much closer and how much richer my relationship is with my daughter because it was deliberate. And so now that you can see, these are the things that work for us, right? I can see the things that work for my husband and I, that we can really stay dating even after being together for this long, right? But it's all about the action plan. The action steps are going to be what's going to take you there. And then because I'm doing it every single month, I can actually see progress. And when you see progress, you can stick with it, right? You can stick with something if you see progress. A lot of times, if you're just in the middle of it all the time, you don't really see that you actually did make progress. You actually did accomplish something that's taking you a step further.
You think it's because you're taking the time to think for what's to come and reverse engineer it back, then you become aware of what you're actually doing that's creating the progress.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's how you've been able to juggle all of this, but in a
But you're maximizing on your time so that you're not feeling overwhelmed, right? If I go somewhere, and how satisfied when I sit on the plane and I'm on my way flying back from California and I realize that I maximized every single moment I could. And so there's a great sense of accomplishment. I literally squeezed out every single inch of that, every single second, every single moment. And so you really feel like, okay, I earned my keep. It's an Irish saying, but I earned my keep today. I definitely did it. But it also helps you with some things are difficult. Some things you might have in your life might even be difficult. And now if I can at least see a little bit of progress, or I can see that it's heading in the right direction, it really does help you to stick with it. That's probably helped me more than anything. It takes me about, as crazy as it is to put I'm just kind of strategic by nature. That's action plan is takes me about 4 hours to work on my life, not in it, on my business, not in it. And but I get to impact an awful lot of people because I'm of that deliberate intent. We all get caught up in busy work. And if I'm just doing a checklist, where's the value in that? At the end of the day, where's the joy in that? Where's the sense of accomplishment in that? I'm just going through the motions instead of really enriching lives.
What do you want the audience to take away from this conversation today?
Wow. I think anything is possible. Mindset, probably more than anything else, is 4 times as important. So whatever you need to do to put your head in the right place, that's the most important thing to do to get to whatever next level it is in your life.